Cool.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the GEG Melbourne and Code for Kids webinar. So I'd just like to welcome Chris Harte and Rita Fitzgerald tonight. Chris Harte joins us as an education consultant, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself in a minute. And Rita joins us from St. Bede's in Balwyn. Probably not there right now, probably at home right now.
Thank you.
But thank you for joining us. So Rita's also a co-leader of the GEG Melbourne community. So we're glad to present tonight to the Digital Technologies Hub. So Rita, just before we start with Chris, I might just get you to just give us a very brief overview of yourself.
Sure. You want me to go first? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just see if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
No worries, sorry. So I'm Rita Fitzgerald. I am the Digital Technologies Leader and Specialist Teacher at St. Bede's in North Balwyn. And I've just recently become one of the GEG Melbourne leaders as well. And I'm very excited to be on this webinar tonight.
Great. And Rita's also going to be monitoring our Twitter hashtag. So if you have any questions throughout tonight, or you'd like to make a statement or anything like that, you'd like to communicate, please use hashtag GEGMelb on Twitter, and we will be getting to those as well. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now. And Chris, maybe you could start with telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is Chris Harte, and I am by trade a French and Spanish teacher. I worked at John Monash Science School in Melbourne for 4 years, where I was leading teacher for personalising learning, and also developed the Emerging Sciences Victoria online science school. Apart from the stuff in school, I am a Google certified innovator and have, in one of my previous roles, was a GEG Melbourne leader as well. And I'm delighted that these guys have taken on the reins and are going to do a much, much better job of making sure that there's some great professional learning out there for you lot in Melbourne. I now am an independent consultant, work under Unstuck Learning Design, and one of the big projects I've been working on this year is the Digital Technologies Hub, which is essentially what I'm going to talk to you about this evening. So if we're ready to go, Kelly, I'll get going and share my screen.
Yep, go for it.
Awesome. Okay, so
do you want me to switch this on to present to everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Go.
All good to go?
All good to go.
Beautiful. So, so once again, what we are going to talk about today is the digital technologies curriculum, and specifically something which has been developed and I've helped to work on it along with a number of other people by Education Services Australia. And this webinar is a GEG Melbourne event and supported by Code for Kids as well. So if you do want to get on the tweets, then hashtag DTHub is a hashtag about Digital Technologies Hub, then hashtag GEGMelb. I'm at CHarte if you want to follow me on Twitter, and Education Services Australia is at EdServeAus. So please do jump on and engage with us on social media. So I'm going to spend probably all in about 20-25 minutes talking about a little bit about the digital technologies curriculum, a little bit about the actual world that we're living in terms of developing digital skills, I guess, for the young people we work with. And then I'm going to share with you the resource, which we're very, very proud of. We think it's a great resource to support schools and leadership and teachers and communities in helping to develop a really great digital technologies curriculum. But unfortunately, I guess, in a lot of ways, when the government comes out and says, okay, we've got a new curriculum that we're developing, teachers feel a little bit like this, and they can kind of feel like there's a bit of cognitive overload there. This is another thing I have to develop. And if you ever want to know what a teacher's mind feels like, imagine a web browser with 2,879 tabs open all the time. So I know you know what that feels like, and sometimes something like the digital technologies curriculum can be seen as a bit of a threat. What I really want us to think about is how it can actually be a real world of possibilities. And as Einstein says, we must embrace the future with both hands, as the best way to predict it is to create it. Now, obviously, Einstein never actually said that, but I thought you would take it more seriously if I put it onto a picture of Einstein. So it is a real world of possibilities. Some of the great things we can do with the digital technologies curriculum is we can look at integrated STEAM projects, you know, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We can look at how to develop really great thinking skills, because one of the big things around the digital technologies curriculum is not just the ability to code and program, it's also the ability to develop really high-level algorithmic and computational thinking skills. It is about an authentic use of technology. So we've all seen, I guess, lots of uses of technology on a Friday afternoon, which have been more about, you know, using technology because it's there rather than really using it for an authentic reason. So yeah, so the digital technologies curriculum gives us the opportunity to really use technology authentically, and it can enhance numeracy. You know, there are lots and lots of links into numeracy there. The thing I get really excited about as a I guess a languages teacher is the idea that digital technologies curriculum gives us the opportunity to have authentic audience for literacy, so that we can have learners who are developing projects and who are developing learning and creating artifacts that they actually share and use their communication skills and their literacy skills and share those artifacts out to the world, out to an authentic audience. And I think technology lets us do that in a way which we've never really imagined or hasn't been really possible before. And it is about this hashtag digital world, because I do want to talk a little bit about the end user, as we would say in kind of corporate and sales world, is I do want to talk about that person that we've actually designed the curriculum for, because grown-ups, big grown-ups probably in Canberra and places like that have designed a digital technologies curriculum. Teachers, people like us, we're the people who are actually going to enact that curriculum and make it happen in the classroom. But at the end of the day, the learning really sits with the children and the young people that we're working with. And I think it's interesting just to spend a few minutes reflecting on them and reflecting on their life and their kind of experience of this digital world that they live in. And a guy who's I know has been on this webinar before, Chris Betcher, who's a friend of mine, and I love listening to him speak when he does things like the EdTech team, Google Apps Summit. I've heard him speak a number of times, and one of the things that he says, which always really resonates with me, is that when you look at the technology that young people and children are using today, that will be the worst technology that they ever have. It's only actually going to get better and faster and more accessible from here onwards. So I think it's just a really interesting thing to think about is, you know, who is our end user? And just to, you know, let's try and visualize who these people are. And I'm just going to share a quick anecdote with you. I'm a French and Spanish teacher, and as I said, and my wife is French, so we have a lot of our family, approximately half our family live in France, and my niece and two brothers-in-law live in Paris. And one Saturday morning we woke up, which was Friday night in France, and we heard reportings of these shootings in central Paris. And obviously we were really shocked and trying to get in touch with people. And it just was an incredible thing that when we jumped onto Facebook, which is kind of one of the first things you do when you're trying to communicate with people, is that this came up. So Mathilde Guevert, who's my niece, she had marked herself safe during the Paris terror attacks. And that really got me to thinking about the role of technology in these kids' lives, that actually she could let us know instantly that she was okay. But there've been some incredible other things in the digital world which have really made me think of the importance of this, and the importance, therefore, of this curriculum. Because I think that when you follow things like the empowerment of technology and look at things like hashtags, there's been some incredible hashtags over the last few years. Things like Je suis Charlie, after the massacres in Paris, where they went in and shot the people who worked on the Charlie Hebdo magazine. Arab Spring, you know, this whole idea of actually organizing revolutions, I guess, using a hashtag. Black Lives Matter, you know, this whole idea of using social media to gather people together. And whether you think, you know, that the protesting and stuff and all of the complexities around it have been enhanced, I guess, by technology. And Porte Ouverte is one of my favorite ones in some respects, and it's one that means open doors. And essentially it's when people have been struck by disaster or something really awful's happened, is they tweet with the Porte Ouverte hashtag, and that essentially means if you can follow me and DM me, send me a direct message, and you can come and stay at my house. You can get off the street and you can come and hide in my house. This idea of having open doors. So I think it's really fascinating, you know, that we can show solidarity, we can demonstrate revolution, we can look at social justice and actually take action through this technology, which is empowering everyone, I guess, but in particular is going to continue to empower the young people and children who we work with. And so it's really important, I think, before we even talk about technology curricula and all those kind of stuff, that we understand the people that we're actually doing this for. And it really makes me think as well, I've got a very simple infographic for you. You can get this online. It's from Mark McCrindle, who is an absolute, incredibly interesting guy. He's a social researcher, and I've heard him speak. I heard him do a keynote, and he's done he does lots and lots of social research and looks at the different generations and all that kind of stuff. Just a couple of things I wanted to point out to you. As I say, you can actually get this infographic from his website, mccrindle.com.au or generationz.com.au. But just to look at Generation Z, you know, those kids who are coming up to kind of 21 years old down to about 7 years old, is this one here, screenagers, this idea that kids are, their face-to-face interaction and electronic media changed in 1997, where these kids were actually spending more time with electronic media than they were with face-to-face interaction. Now, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is for debate. It's just a really interesting thing to know. That if you look at leadership styles, so we've got here that the baby boomers of, actually just going to put my laser pointer, the baby boomers have a leadership style which is command and control, but Generation Z tend to have a collaboration and contribution role. When you look up here in terms of teaching and learning, effective engagement for baby boomers is verbal, sit and listen, teacher. It's about having job security, commanding, curriculum-centered, closed book exams, books and paper. Whereas when we look at Generation Z, it's a much more visual thing. They're interested in try and see, facilitators, flexibility, collaboration, learner-centric, open book world, and this idea of glass and devices. You know, they interact with so much through the screen and through glass. And then the generation which is coming next, those under 7, that whole idea of Generation Alpha, you know, what technology are they going to have? And just, I love the redefined life stages of, you know, 20th century was childhood, teenager, adulthood. Now it's childhood, tween. That's my boy is a tween, as he tells me. Teenager, young adult, kippers, so kids in parents' pockets eroding retirement savings. Adulthood, career changes, and down ages. And when you think about the actual technology that we're talking about, and we're developing a digital technologies curriculum, if you look at 1997, google.com domain was registered, and then USB flash drives in 2000, Wikipedia 2001, you know, Facebook 2006, Twitter 2006, YouTube 2005, coming through 2010, Instagram, you know, all the way through Google Glass, 3D printers, Apple Watch, Tesla Powerwalls, all of this technology it's an incredibly exponentially growing and improving space. And I just think it's super important that we think about that when we think about the world our kids are living in. We're really trying to prepare them for a future that we don't understand, that we don't know what it's going to look like. And we have to be careful that we're not trying to prepare them for our own experience of life and our own past, I guess. So yeah, so I just wanted to share those kind of thoughts with you before we look specifically at the digital technologies curriculum. So Kelly and Rita, are you happy just to interrupt if there are any questions?
Keep going. You're doing a really good job. I'm loving listening to the power of the social media and the tools.
Awesome. So
it's a great infographic.
It's a wonderful infographic. I've got it stuck up on my wall, and he's got a few different ones, and you can get them all from the website. And I've written some notes around them. It's just to try and help me to to really understand. But what it makes me think of is that Generation X, a lot of Generation X and Generation Y are teaching that Generation Z and Generation Alpha. And I just think it's a really interesting way to think, you know, to really think about the kids and that we're dealing with and the world sorry, they're living in. Okay, so I'm going to rock on now through to what the learners are actually going to learn. So digital technologies curriculum, depending on how, I guess, familiar you are with it now, it is important that you do get familiar with it. It is going to be statutory. It's already being taught and assessed in Queensland in some kind of trial school. So they're looking at building the assessments and things. But what are kids going to learn? Well, they're definitely going to learn about technology. So this idea of, you know, how does a network function? How does an email get from one computer through a bunch of servers out to a phone on the other side of the world? They learn a little bit about binary, for example, and mathematics. And I won't test you, but I'm sure you all know that 011, 001, 00011, and all that says DT hub in binary. So they do learn about technology, but I think, which is a really important thing, excuse me, but almost, I guess, equally important is that they learn with technology. And there's a really nice example on the DT hub, which I'll share with you. So for example, one of the activities that kids do is they actually write an algorithm, which essentially is just a list of instructions about how to plant a seed and how to look after a seed. And then they actually follow the algorithm and they do some planting, and they then record using, you know, a tablet or something, record some video and record some measurements of the plant growth. And then they can actually, you know, graph that plant growth and actually do some stuff with the data. So the idea again about integrating the thinking around digital technologies in terms of algorithmic thinking, computational thinking, also integrating the other science and engineering, mathematics, etc., but also using the technology that is in their hands. Because they do need to think with technology, and it's actually a really key part, and probably for me, one of the most important parts of the digital technologies curriculum is this idea of developing computational thinking. Because computational thinking, I guess, one of the things that I've always been passionate about, or not always, not since a child, but I guess within the last 10 years being passionate about, is design thinking as an approach to problem solving and inquiry for young people. But computational thinking is a similar process in lots of ways, but it's a specific process that's used a lot in developing software and algorithm solutions to problems. So it has these big words, which I don't think we should worry too much about, but, you know, decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, algorithm design just means look at your problem, decompose it, break it down into bits, look for any patterns that you can find, abstract or hypothesize any ideas that you could apply to solve this problem, and then design an algorithm. Now that doesn't have to be written in code. It doesn't necessarily have to be programmed. It could be a simple algorithm, which is a set of instructions which can be repeated in order to solve a problem. And this other idea around algorithmic thinking is it is just, you know, a set of instructions in a lot of ways. Right? People get scared of the words, like algorithmic thinking. It just means a kind of approach whereby you can write out in some ways, either through code or even plain English, you know, some pseudo languages. You can write out a set of really simple instructions that can be followed by anyone. And you can do it in such a way that it's detailed enough that they will get the same outcome every time they run that code or run that algorithm. And I am actually going to try a trick live.
Oh, I think Chris has dropped out.
Chris just dropped out. He'll come back in a minute.
While he's reconnecting, actually, somebody had a question, Kelly, on the tweets about where to find the infographic. I know Chris said it was from that website. Can you remember the guy's name again?
I can't remember his name, but Chris is coming back on now.
Yeah, we'll get it from.
So, Chris, the infographic. Could you let us know? We're just going to tweet out where you got that from.
Yeah, it's generationz.com.au.
Okay. What was the guy's name again?
I've got it's Mark McCrindle, McCrindle. So I've just realized actually I do have a tab suspended to kind of ignore this tab. I do have a tab suspended, like I have tab fever, so I have too many tabs open, and so they go. I just realized that that's what happened with this Hangout tab. Also goes to sleep. So did you get up to the bit where I'm going to show you a rope trick?
Yeah, you are. Yes.
Yeah,
you
just said that. Yeah.
I'm excited by this. So one of the things about algorithmic thinking, this is my piece of rope to help demonstrate it, is
I wonder what that rope was for.
Stress rope is if I give you a simple task to do, and we should have set this up where you guys did it as well. But anyway, if I give you a task to do, which was to tie 5 knots, then of equal distance along a piece of rope, then you would, you know, get your piece of rope, and then you would, you know, make a knot, and it's a pretty repetitive and slightly boring thing to do. And interestingly, though, computers love boring stuff and they love repetitive stuff. Whereas I would never sit here to tie 1,000 knots. A computer can actually do it using a loop. Like if you're doing some coding, you could do do this forever or do this 100 times or something. And computers are great at taking boring tasks. And algorithmic thinking is about looking at how you can get these instructions to be as efficient as possible. And we call that optimization. So how do you optimize a set of instructions. And computers can do it really well. So if you imagine I wanted to tie 5 knots along this piece of rope, I'm just going to lean back a bit. Then actually what I could do is I could tie them as I just showed you. Or if I was smart, I could actually create a loop algorithm saying, well, rather than tying individual knots, just create your 5 loops like this, and then run the program through them. And rather than having to tie 5 individual knots, I get that instead. So this idea that
clever.
Cool, isn't it? So
that's clever.
We're running another webinar on how to do that. It was this idea that you can optimize. You can optimize using algorithmic thinking. You can actually optimize algorithms and programming to create things really simply that you could never create on your own, I guess, as a human. So I'm just going to
realize we're all going off to do that knot thing after this.
Yeah.
Honestly, the idea how it took me to learn to do and then to get it right every time.
I really like how it's. I really like the activity because it's an offline activity, so it sort of promotes that not everything has to be online to learn computational thinking skills and algorithmic skills, because we can do offline things as well. So that sort of addresses the sort of screen time issue that parents have.
Yeah.
I feel anyway.
Sure.
Absolutely. There's a guy called Professor Tim Bell who's produced CS Unplugged. So all of these unplugged activities, all these offline activities you can do. I do need to do a plug, and I almost forgot. There is going to be a Google Education on Air conference on the 3rd of December, which I believe Code for Kids is going to be represented at.
Yes.
And there's also Professor Tim Bell is going to be doing one of the keynotes. So it'll be really interesting to hear from him about CS Unplugged, and then from Kelly about CS Plugged, I guess, and coding.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm going to jump back in and just share this again. Let's go. So are you good? You guys can see the slides again?
Yeah, I'll jump it on to present to everyone again, Chris.
Cool.
There we go.
So yeah, so we've got not only learning how to code and things, but really learning about computational thinking and algorithmic thinking. But also building with tech. So this whole thing about being creative with technology is such good fun. And I ran a course this year for French teachers to the French Teachers Association of Victoria. And one of the really nice things, and it's definitely worth a go, is within Scratch, for example, is you can just scroll down at the bottom of the page on the home page of Scratch, and you can set the language to a different language. So I had all of these teachers who had no idea at all about how to code anything really, but who were good at French. And we set the language to French, and we said it's just directions, like just read, So we said, and then had to go with this with kids and saying, let's not worry too much about the French. You guys have already, know how to use Scratch, so let's just turn the language into French, and it just helps you to kind of engage with that language, I guess, because everyone who's learned French, I will find that they've done a unit somewhere on directions around town. Like nobody needs to know directions around town in French anymore because they've just got Google Maps. So let's not do directions around town. Let's do some coding in Scratch, but let's do it in French. So this idea of building with technology and creating beautiful things, beautiful artifacts. So how can we help? And this is, I hope, the bit which is going to be most useful for people tonight, is this idea of the Digital Technologies Hub. So the DT Hub came from Education Services Australia, which is essentially all of the ministers of education from the states and territories own Education Services Australia. So ESA creates lots of resources, things like Scoodle, which people will probably know, creates lots of resources to support government initiatives. So what they've done is they've got resources on Scoodle, they've got lesson sequences which have been developed by some practicing teachers, case studies and advice, and I was privileged to be able to do a number of those case studies and write up some of that advice as well. There is a short link to the Digital Technologies Hub, which is bit.ly/DT Hub. There is a long link, which is digitaltechnologieshub.edu.au. And what I'd like to do is just show you very briefly, I guess, what it looks like in terms of how it's set up. It is changing because we did get it all together as quickly as we could, and we've done a number of design briefs. Launch as Google does. Launch early and iterate. So we're reiterating as we go, just to make it as accessible as possible, because there is some real gold in there, but some of it was a few clicks further away than we wanted it to be. So it will change a little bit in the way it looks and the way you access stuff, but only for the better. But I'll show you what it looks like at the moment. Essentially, this is the homepage. There is a search bar for resources, and then there's a section for primary, secondary, school leaders, students, and families. So students and families, the stuff in there is great. I didn't work particularly on that, but it is a fabulous piece of work in there for yourself. You know, if you've got kids yourself, and also some great stuff in there for students. But the bit I want to show you specifically is about the primary, secondary, and school leaders. So it's broken up on, as I say, into these different sections. Primary teachers and secondary teachers has all of the lesson plans and stuff on pedagogy and assessment in it. School leaders has got the advice and strategies for some school-wide implementation. And then I'd say families and students has got the things in there to support families and students with digital technologies. So the teacher pages, which I guess is the stuff that you guys are more interested in, is broken up F to 6 for primary and then 7 to 10 for secondary. And each of the sections at the moment are getting started, school approach, effective teachers, teaching, assessment, and professional links. So getting started has the exemplar lesson sequences in it. So there are lesson plans that you could, they are super, super detailed. So if you are not feeling confident, then you could pick up one of these and you've got a really detailed lesson plan with resources there that you can use. If you are just looking for a bit of inspiration, then you can pick up that lesson plan, scan through it, and think, right, I've got some good ideas I could take away from that. School Approach has got these case studies of practice, which I'm going to show you quickly. In effective teaching, it's all about the pedagogical practices, and that's the bit that I've spent a lot of time working on. We need to come up with a kind of a consistent approach, because people, you know, we all design learning in our own ways, but when you're trying to share something with nationally with a bunch of teachers, you need to have a pedagogical approach. So that's quite a detailed pedagogical approach in there. Then that's the exemplar lesson sequences are then written using those approaches. Assessment is guidance on assessment. So one of the things we know is there's a little bit of confusion on the site between assessment, which is literally how do you assess in your state of territory, versus assessment for learning and assessment, summative assessment as well. So formative and summative assessment, which is actually in the effective teaching part. And then professional links are all of the conferences and things like that you can get involved with. So let's have a look. So what I've got here is, and what I will do is I'll tweet out this page, which has just some short links. I'll probably tweet out all the short links. Let me just turn off my laser pointer, which will, if you're interested in a primary learning sequence, then you can click on this short link. If you're interested in secondary, if you want to look at some of the researchers using search, all those kind of things, then I'll tweet out all of these short links for you. So let's have a quick look at just a couple of these. So the website looks a bit like this. So Introduction to Binary is a year 5-6 lesson sequence. So to get to it, you go primary teachers, getting started, and introduction to binary. So the curriculum links and the assessment links are up here now. And then you've got the learning sequence. So the learning sequence is broken down into these sections. So learning hook is just that kind of engager activity at the start of a sequence of learning that we just want kids to think, get kids to think about the learning that's to come. We then look at learning maps and outcomes. So we do talk about the different outcomes. And we specifically talk about things like the knowledge they're going to develop, but also a little bit about mindset and skill set and tool set. The learning input, so that's, that's the input from a teacher or from a resource or from a student teacher or, whatever that input is. But super importantly, sequences of construction where kids are actually working on developing their own understanding. Then learning demonstration, which is about them showing what they've learned in terms of content. And then learning reflection, which is then thinking, the meta reflection about thinking about their learning and how to improve those learning skills, I guess. So you'll see that it is long. There's a lot of detail in these, but they're broken down into sections so you can see, and you can use the nav bar at the side so you can see what's going on. And then if I click on one of the resources, I think this one's a PDF. The resources are there for you as well. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense just on its own, but it was within the context of this learning sequence. So all of the this is actually one of the newer looking ones, but which we have changed the design of this slightly. But essentially, all of the lesson sequences you need are in getting started, and then there's a bit of preamble and a bit of information here as well, and then all of the content is down here. So Introduction to Binary is the one we've just looked at. And we've got at least one for each of the year groups and kind of the different digital technologies, knowledge and understanding, and processes and production skills, as well as knowledge and understanding, and then split into just knowledge and understanding and process and production skills. So there are tons, as you can see if I keep scrolling, there are tons and tons of learning sequences there, and we are adding more and more as we go. The secondary learning sequences look essentially the same. They are, at a level, some of them in year 10 are probably at a level where you need a really a good understanding of the content, whereas I think actually quite a lot of the primary ones, we've got enough resource there to support you with the content, so you can, even if you're not an expert in binary, you could still teach this lesson and learn alongside the kids. I think that's a really important thing for teachers to do. If we have a quick jump across to the school approach.
Chris, I love how in the, because I've had a look at some of those lessons, and they're very detailed, and anyone can pick them up and just run with it. They don't need to have any knowledge at all, really, because it's all within that that plan that you put together. So they're really, really good.
Brilliant, thank you. My benchmark was, I'm a French and Spanish teacher. I have taught coding because I kind of had to. It became part of my curriculum that someone needed to teach it. But I figured if I can teach these, then anyone can teach them. But by the time I get to year 10, I'm a bit stretched, but I don't think there are lots of schools who will have content specialists, or people with zero content knowledge at year 10. So I think I'm really proud of that. It gets up to that level. In the school approach, there's just a few things which are definitely worth looking at, and they're just some case studies around different ways of implementation. So North Fitzroy, for example, is looking at the integration of ICT across the curriculum. St Aidan's Anglican Girls' School in Queensland, they actually look at using the library as a makerspace and teach a digital technology curriculum through there. And again, there are a pile of these in here, and we're doing more and more of them. So there are lots of really useful case studies there. Under the effective teaching section, this is where we do talk about pedagogical practices. So we really break down that elemental learning design, which is just the posh term for this lesson planning sequence. So we break it down and talk about what's important in each of those sections. We then do talk a bit about this idea of mindset, skill set, and tool sets. And then there are sections again on formative assessments. I really love the formative assessment. It's got lots of really nice things like no hands up rules with random name pickers, looking for ungoogleable questions, pose, pounce, bounce, which is a really nice assessment for learning strategy, and just lots of really simple ideas, thinking routines, visible thinking routines to support you. And also in the summative assessment, there are this idea of building up rubrics in particular, and how you can build up different rubrics. And then the assessment bit, this is where it gets slightly confusing, and we are changing it. So it's the formative and summative assessment, which for me is the most important stuff, is in effective teaching. The assessment itself is just links to things like Akara and Bostes, and the Vic one is DigiPubs, which is actually a really good resource. If you haven't seen that, it's actually a really great resource to have a look at, providing guidelines for planning assessment tasks. And then the professional links is just a calendar for essentially upcoming events and professional associations that you can get involved with. Same for secondary teachers, so just exactly the same setup. So I want to go through that, but I do just want to quickly show you school leaders, because I guess some of you out there are going to be having to do the change management around these. And so what we did within, and this again is one of the big sections I worked on, is setting the culture, building understanding, implementing change, and assessing impact. So behind each of these sections about change management is you've got this idea about preparing your leaders, so interactive leadership profiles, some more case study stuff, looking at your technology infrastructure, looking at mapping your curriculum. This is one of my favorite pictures. It's from St Mel's Catholic Primary in Campsie in New South Wales. And what they've done is they've taken essentially all of the outcomes that they have to cover, and they've put them on the hexagons, which is my favorite shape. And essentially they put them up on boards by year group as a kind of calendar. So I'm not sure how well you can see this, but you'll be able to see it on the site. There's this one here, you've got January to December. and they've essentially put all of these outcome hexagons on here and looked for outcome clusters. So essentially you've got like literacy outcomes and maths outcomes and numeracy outcomes and also digital technology outcomes as well, and looked how they cluster together to create projects essentially. And if you look here on the bottom picture, which I think is a wonderful one as well, is if you can see it's in the background, it's in their kind of staff learning area, is they've got a board for each of the grades. So 5, 6, 3, 4, 1, 2, and the little ones. So you've actually got these cluster maps, so people can see what other year groups or other grade groups are doing, and you get rid of, you trim away the fat, I guess, and you can actually really see the curriculum mapped out in a very visual way. And because it's up on those boards, they can actually move them around, so they can actually change projects and look for new connections. And again, you can't really see it brilliantly, but you'll see there's some string on the boards here, and they're connecting different outcome clusters. So it's I think it's a wonderful way to actually get that curriculum, the whole curriculum, and make it visible. Under the different sections, again, you've got looking at the TPAC model. So it's just a way to, there should be, there's images missing from here. There is a TPAC model of the technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge. So, some of your teachers will have super content knowledge and great pedagogy, but maybe lacking technology experience. Or some people will be great at technology, great at content knowledge, but maybe you can work on pedagogy. So there's stuff there around professional learning, and then implementing change, looking at using design and how you can actually use design in order to create really, really sustainable change. So it doesn't just, you don't just go in on a Monday morning and say, oh, by the way, next week I want you to teach digital technologies curriculum, best of luck. And then some stuff on assessing the impact. So, start, stop, continue is an innovation model. So just this idea of saying, what should we start that we're not doing? What should we stop that we're wasting time on? And what should we continue doing? So I hope you can see that there is a pile of stuff in there. We're working really hard on trying to make it easy as possible to find. If you know what you're looking for in the search bar, so if you were looking for B-bots, for example, so B-bots are just those little robots that get used quite a lot in Foundation. There's, you can search for B-bots, and there's a lesson sequence, there's some documents on getting started, there's some links to some video and all that kind of stuff in there. And so if you know what you're looking for, then you can actually use the search stuff. And if you're not sure, then maybe just go through the primary teachers or the secondary teachers and start exploring in there. Ooh, I've gone over time. I apologize.
Doesn't matter because it was so good.
Because it's gone all documented on me.
Stop 17. Okay.
Is that okay?
Thanks, Chris. That was really awesome. There's so much in there to take in and for people to really grasp and take away what they want. So I think it's good to give a lot of information, and then people might only take away 1 or 2 things and implement that, and that might be enough for them till they get confident to do some more. And that gives a really good starting point. How about you, Rita? How do you feel about?
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's such a great resource for teachers. Like, there is so much out there, but it's so well planned and so detailed that, as Kelly said, you can just dip in and out of it, take away a little bit, go back to it, and it looks like whether you don't know anything or you have some experience of it, there's something for everybody there. So yeah, well done. It's great.
So thank you for that.
We're really, really keen as well is to 2 things. We're really, really keen to have feedback. So so people say, well, actually I would like more of this, or I'm finding it difficult. So even that kind of feedback around the site itself, because we didn't realize what a massive beast it was until we kind of made it, and it's so a lot of the work we're doing is trying to optimize it, I guess, and make it really accessible. But the other thing is that we're super interested, and the government has funded, government's taking this really seriously, which is great, and they have funded some further work and on the hub. So looking for things like more, if you've got wonderful lesson sequences you want to share, or if you're interested in having a case study done, all that kind of stuff, we would love to hear from you. And I can't remember what the email is, Oh, it's Digital Technologies Hub at esa.edu.au. So I'll tweet that out as well. I'll do a series of tweets as soon as we're finished here, and it'd be great to hear from you. So we'd love the feedback. On the site itself, there is also an option to give feedback at the bottom of the homepage.
That's great. And also, as Chris mentioned before, there's the Education on Air with the, Google that's going to be starting in New Zealand or Australia, Chris?
Where it's a mixed group. So actually, Claire Amos is going to kick us off. Oh, actually, sorry, the keynotes are first, and it'll start at 10 a.m. Australian daytime, AEDT, whatever that one is. The current one, if you're in Sydney or Melbourne, it's that time.
Eastern Standard Time. Daylight savings, yeah.
So it'll start at 10 a.m. with some great keynotes. So we've got Professor John Harte, which is really interesting. We've got Professor Tim Bell, who does all the CS Unplugged stuff. So whether you love or you hate Hatte's work, which I think he's a really interesting guy to listen to. Tim Bell is wonderful, so there'll be some examples there of him actually demonstrating some activities with some kids. So we've got some lucky Sydney-sided kids who are going to go and actually work with Tim Bell, and we're going to film that. So we can share that. And then who else is there? Mark McCrindle, so the guy the social researcher, infographic chap, is going to be one of the keynotes. And then Julia Gillard, so that should be a really interesting one. So she's going to be keynotes. And then we've got the actual sessions haven't been announced yet, but I can give you a sneak preview that Kelly's doing one of them.
Yes.
We've got some wonderful sessions from New Zealand. I'm scared to mention people because I'll forget most of them, but yeah, we've got some fantastic sessions covering school change, covering coding, covering Rebecca Vivian and Dr. Associate Professor Katrina Faulkner from University of Adelaide. We've got stuff on, Google spreadsheets and data. We've got stuff on Google Maps. We've got lots and lots of tons of different opportunities. So again, we'll tweet out, and I'll certainly tweet out the link to register your interest for that.
Yes.
So that
Great professional development for people to tap into. Even if they don't watch the whole thing, which is a long time to watch, they can tap in at different stages, which is good. I tapped in last year, so thank you so much, Chris, for joining us tonight, and Rita for monitoring the Twitter field. And we're very excited because we have taken on the GEG community from Chris and Kimberly, who did such a fantastic job of getting it off the ground with over 2,500 followers. So clap to you guys. You guys did a great job. And we've got some really exciting events planned coming up for next year. And also just before Computer Science Week, in December, Anthony Sprandis is going to join us as well to do a webinar on exploring things you can do to introduce computer science into your school for to promote that week as well. So that will be our next webinar. But other than that, we do have some face-to-face and webinar events lined up for next year, don't we, Rita?
Yes, it's going to be very exciting. So tune in.
Yes, tune in. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.